My best friend asked me to pretend to be her boyfriend for one weekend. 3 days later, I kissed her. For days later, I almost lost her. And a week after that, my entire life looked different. The crazy part? I had been in love with Emma Collins for 9 years. 9 years. Long enough to memorize the way she stirred her coffee. Long enough to know she always cried during animated movies but denied it every single time. Long enough to know that if she ever looked at me the way I looked at her, I probably wouldn't survive it. My name is Logan Parker. I'm 33 years old, and for almost a decade, I made one very simple mistake. I convinced myself that being her best friend was enough. It wasn't. I just didn't know it yet. Emma called me on a Tuesday evening. The second I answered, I knew something was wrong. Not terrible. Not emergency level wrong. Just Emma level wrong. The kind where she had spent 3 hours overthinking something before finally calling. Logan, that's usually my name. Can you stop being annoying for 1 minute? No. She sighed. I smiled. That was our normal. What happened? A pause. Then another. Finally, my sister is getting married this weekend. Yeah, I know. You've only mentioned it 17 times. Logan. Sorry. 18. She groaned. That's actually why I'm calling. I leaned back on my couch. Okay. Another pause. Then she said something that nearly stopped my heart. Would you come with me? I frowned. To the wedding? Yes. Emma, you know I'd go. Not as my friend. Silence. Then, I need you to pretend to be my boyfriend. You're kidding. I wish I was. I sat up straight. For a moment, I genuinely thought she was joking. Emma wasn't the type of woman who asked people for favors. Especially favors like this. Why me? I asked. The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Because there was only one answer that mattered. Because she trusted me. But Emma laughed nervously. Because you're the only man I know who won't make it weird. That sentence hit harder than it should have. The only man who won't make it weird. After 9 years of secretly loving her, that was probably the most accurate description of me. Safe, reliable, predictable, not boyfriend material. Just Logan. Always Logan. Always the friend. You still there? She asked. Yeah. So? I rubbed my forehead. What exactly would this involve? Emma immediately sounded relieved. The way people sound when they know they're about to win an argument. My parents think I'm bringing someone. Why would they think that? Because I told them I was. I stared at the ceiling. Emma. I panicked. Emma. It just slipped out. Emma. Okay, I lied. I laughed despite myself. That was another thing about her. No matter how bad my day was, she could make me laugh. Sometimes I hated that. Most of the time I loved it. So what happens if I say no? She became suspiciously quiet. Emma, I'll probably spend the entire weekend getting interrogated by my relatives. About marriage. You're 31. Exactly. I nodded. That explained everything. Family weddings were dangerous, especially for single people. They turned normal relatives into relationship detectives. So I just show up and pretend we're together? That's all. I knew she was lying. Not intentionally. Just optimistically. Nothing was ever that simple. Still, the thought of spending an entire weekend beside Emma was already making my decision for me. Fine. There was silence. Then, really? I smiled. Really? A squeal exploded through the phone. I pulled it away from my ear. You're insane. You're the best. I know. Thank you. The warmth in her voice made my chest tighten. Dangerous. Very dangerous. But it was too late now. I had already agreed. The wedding was 4 days later, which gave me exactly 4 days to prepare for the worst idea of my adult life. Pretending to date the woman I loved. What could possibly go wrong? The answer, as it turned out, was everything. Friday morning, we started the 4-hour drive to the lakeside resort where the wedding would take place. Emma arrived carrying enough luggage for a 6-month expedition. I looked at her suitcase, then at her, then back at the suitcase. Are you moving there permanently? She rolled her eyes. Some people like options. That's not options. That's a relocation plan. She laughed and punched my shoulder. And for one brief second, Everything felt normal. Until she opened the passenger door. Then she froze. What? My mom. I looked at her phone. Incoming call. Mom. Emma groaned. Answer it. No. Emma. She'll start asking questions. I grinned. Then answer it. She narrowed her eyes. Then accepted the call. Hi, Mom. A pause. Then, yes, Logan is here. Another pause. Emma's face turned red. No, we're not holding hands. I nearly drove off the road laughing. Emma smacked my arm. Her mother kept talking. And suddenly Emma looked horrified. Oh my God. What? I whispered. She covered the microphone. They booked us a couple's suite. I almost hit the brakes. A what? A couple's suite. The next 4 hours suddenly became much more interesting. And much more dangerous. Because for the first time since this ridiculous plan started, pretending didn't feel quite so simple anymore. The resort was even worse than I imagined. Or better, depending on how much you enjoy emotional torture. The place sat beside a huge lake surrounded by pine trees. White lights hung from wooden buildings, and everything looked like it belonged in a romantic movie. Exactly the kind of place a man should avoid when he's secretly in love with his best friend. The moment we walked into the lobby, a smiling receptionist greeted us. Welcome. Reservation for Parker. I handed over my ID. The woman typed for a moment and smiled. Oh yes, the bridal family package. Emma immediately looked nervous. That should have been my warning. What package? I asked. The receptionist smiled wider. Complimentary couples activities. I looked at Emma. Emma looked at the floor. The receptionist continued. Boat ride, wine tasting, couples photo shoot, and thank you. Emma interrupted quickly. The receptionist blinked. Of course. I turned toward Emma. You knew. It wasn't important. It wasn't important? She grabbed her suitcase. Let's just get to the room. Things got worse 5 minutes later. Our room had exactly one bed. One. Very large. Very comfortable. Very dangerous. Emma stopped in the doorway. I stopped behind her. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I looked at the reservation. Then at the bed. Then at the reservation again. Couple's suite. Emma groaned. I hate my sister. I laughed. You booked this. I thought there would be a sofa. There isn't. She dropped her face into her hands. This is a disaster. Honestly, it wasn't. At least not for me. The real disaster was trying to act normal while standing beside the woman I'd loved for 9 years. Relax, I said. We'll survive one weekend. Emma looked at me and smiled. The kind of smile that always made me forget what I was saying. Thanks, Logan. There it was again. That feeling. The one I'd spent years trying to bury. The wedding rehearsal dinner started that evening. And within 10 minutes, I understood exactly why Emma wanted me there. Her family was insane. Not bad people. Just incredibly nosy. An aunt I'd never met sat beside me. So, here we go. How long have you two been together? Emma answered before I could. Almost a year. I nearly choked on my drink. A year? That was news to me. The aunt gasped. A year. Emma nodded. The lie came so naturally it was honestly impressive. Then the aunt looked at me. When did you know she was the one? I stared. Emma stared. The aunt waited. Apparently this required an answer. Cleared my throat. The first time she made me laugh. The words escaped before I could stop them. Emma's smile disappeared. Not completely. Just enough. For a second, she looked at me differently. Then the moment was gone. And conversation continued. But something had changed. I felt it. And judging by the way Emma kept avoiding my eyes for the rest of dinner, she felt it too. Later that night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I stepped outside for some air. The lake was perfectly still. Moonlight reflected across the water. For the first time all day, everything was quiet. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Emma. She walked over and stood beside me. Neither of us spoke immediately. We just stared at the lake. Finally she smiled. You were good tonight. I survived. No. She shook her head. You were actually good. I laughed. That's because your family terrified me. Emma smiled. Then looked down. Thanks for coming. There was something different in her voice. Something softer. More vulnerable. I glanced at her. The moonlight caught her face. And suddenly I remembered every version of her I'd ever known. The 22-year-old girl who spilled coffee on my shoes. The friend who stayed with me after my father died. The woman who answered every phone call no matter how late it was. 9 years. 9 years of memories. 9 years of pretending friendship was enough. And standing there beside the lake, for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't sure I could keep pretending. Then Emma quietly asked, "Can I tell you something?" "Always." She took a deep breath, and what she said next made my heart stop. "There's a reason I asked you to come. Not because of my family. Not because of the wedding. Not because I needed a fake boyfriend." She looked directly into my eyes, and suddenly I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the rest. I swallowed. "Then why did you ask me?" Emma looked back toward the hotel, toward the lights, toward the wedding guests laughing somewhere inside, as if she was trying to gather courage from a place that didn't have any left to give. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I was scared." I frowned. "Of what?" She laughed softly. Not because anything was funny, because she was nervous. Emma only laughed like that when she was about to say something she couldn't take back. "Of you." That definitely wasn't the answer I expected. "Me?" She nodded, then immediately shook her head. "Not you. The way I feel when I'm around you." My heart stopped, then started again, much harder. "Emma." She looked down at her hands. "You know what the worst part is?" I couldn't speak. She continued anyway. "I don't even know when it happened." The night air suddenly felt thinner. "I kept telling myself you were my best friend." Her eyes lifted to mine. "And you were." A pause. "But somewhere along the way," she swallowed, "you became more than that." Every sound around us disappeared. The lake, the wind, the music, everything, gone. There was only Emma, only her voice, only the impossible things she was saying. For 9 years I had imagined hearing those words. Hundreds of times. Maybe thousands. Usually it happened differently. In my imagination, I always had something clever to say. Something romantic. Something worthy of the moment. Instead I stood there like an idiot, staring at her, unable to form a single complete thought. Emma laughed nervously. "See? What?" "That's exactly why I didn't want to tell you." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "You never run out of things to say." She smiled sadly. "And now you're just staring." I finally found my voice. "Emma." "Yeah. I've been in love with you for 9 years." Silence. Complete silence. Then, "What?" The word came out exactly like a whisper. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I was terrified. "Yeah." Emma stared at me, waiting. I shrugged helplessly. "Since the bookstore." Her eyes widened. "The bookstore? The day you dropped an entire shelf of travel guides." "I did not." "You absolutely did. It was one shelf. It was 6 shelves. It was windy. We were indoors." Emma covered her face. "Oh my God." I laughed, and suddenly she was laughing too. The tension broke. Not completely, just enough. Enough for us to breathe again. Then Emma stepped closer. 1 step, that's all. But it felt like crossing a continent. "You loved me that long?" I nodded. Her eyes became suspiciously shiny. "Logan." "Yeah. You are unbelievably stupid." I laughed. "I know." "No." She pointed at me. 9 years. I was trying not to ruin our friendship." Emma looked like she wanted to throw something at me. 9 years. You already said that." "I know." She shook her head, then smiled. The kind of smile that made my chest hurt, because it was full of affection, full of disbelief, full of relief. Like she'd finally found something she'd been searching for. Then her expression changed. Not worse, just serious. "Can I tell you something else?" I suddenly wasn't sure my heart could survive another confession. But I nodded. "Sure." Emma took a deep breath. "The reason I told my family I was bringing a boyfriend." I waited. "The reason I picked you." Another pause. Then, "I wasn't pretending as much as I claimed." I stared at her, and for the first time all night, Neither of us looked away. The lake shimmered behind her. The wedding lights glowed in the distance. And suddenly I realized this weekend had never been about helping Emma avoid awkward questions. Not really. It had been about courage. Two people spending years hiding behind friendship. And finally running out of places to hide. For a moment, neither of us moved. Neither of us joked. Neither of us tried to hide behind the safety we'd built for almost a decade. Emma stood in front of me with her hands tucked into the pockets of her jacket, looking both terrified and relieved. And honestly, I probably looked exactly the same. "You really weren't pretending?" I asked quietly. She shook her head. "Not completely." A smile touched her lips. "It started that way." I waited. "Then my mom asked if I was bringing someone." She laughed softly. "And the first person I thought about was you." My heart did that dangerous thing again. The thing it only did around Emma. The thing it had been doing for 9 years. "Why didn't you tell me?" Emma looked toward the lake. "Because I didn't know if I was imagining it." "What?" "The feelings." She sighed. "Logan, you've been my best friend for almost a third of my life." That hit harder than I expected. Because it was true. We had been there for everything. Bad jobs, breakups, family problems, career disasters, birthdays, funerals, everything. "I kept asking myself if I loved you," she admitted. "And," her smile grew, "and then you helped me move apartments for the third time." I laughed. "That's when you knew?" "No." She laughed too. "That's when I started worrying." "Worrying?" "You carried a couch up 3 flights of stairs without complaining." I looked offended. "I complained." "Not enough." She stepped closer. "Then my car broke down." I nodded. "You drove 40 minutes to get me." "That's what friends do." Emma looked at me. "No." The word landed softly. "But that's the problem." I felt my chest tighten. Because I knew exactly what she meant. Friends help. But sometimes people hide love inside helpful things. Inside rides. Inside coffee. Inside phone calls. Inside showing up. Again. And again. And again. Until one day they realize they've built an entire life around someone. "I started comparing everyone to you." Emma looked embarrassed. "That sounds terrible." "It kind of does." She rolled her eyes. "See? That's exactly what I mean." "What?" "No one else talks to me like this." I smiled. "Most people are smarter than me." "Most people aren't you." For a second neither of us spoke. The words hung between us. Warm. Dangerous. Real. Then her phone buzzed. Both of us jumped. Emma looked down. And groaned. "My sister." "What now?" Emma read the message. Then covered her face. "Oh no." "What?" She turned the screen toward me. "Where are you two?" "MOM thinks you're making out somewhere. Please confirm or deny." I laughed so hard I nearly doubled over. Emma wasn't far behind. A second message appeared. "Actually, don't deny it. Mom already placed a bet with Aunt Lisa. Your family is insane." They really are. For the first time all night, the tension broke completely. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. Until tears appeared in Emma's eyes. Until the fear finally started disappearing. And something else took its place. Hope. Eventually the laughter faded. The lake became quiet again. Emma looked at me. Really looked at me. The way she had all evening. The way she never had before. Or maybe the way she'd always wanted to. "I don't want this weekend to be fake anymore." The words were simple. But they changed everything. I took a step toward her. "So don't let it be." Her breath caught. And suddenly the distance between us felt enormous. Only a few inches. But enormous. Because once it disappeared, nothing would ever be the same. "Logan." "Yeah. I'm scared." I smiled. "So am I." That seemed to help. Because Emma smiled back. Small. Nervous. Beautiful. "Good. Good. If you're scared too, then at least I'm not doing this alone." I laughed softly. "No." I reached for her hand. And this time she didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. "No, you're definitely not alone." The wedding lights reflected in her eyes. The wind moved a few strands of her hair. And for the first time in 9 years, neither of us was pretending anymore. Then Emma squeezed my hand. Can I ask you something? Anything. A mischievous smile appeared on her face. The first truly playful smile since our conversation started. When exactly were you planning to tell me? I groaned immediately. Oh, absolutely not. Her smile widened. Oh yes. Emma. 9 years, Logan. I was working through some things. She laughed. 9 years. I like being thorough. Emma shook her head. And before I could think of another excuse, she stepped closer. Close enough that I forgot what I was saying. Close enough that suddenly nothing felt funny anymore. Only real. Very, very real. And then she whispered, I think you've made me wait long enough. Emma's words settled between us. I think you've made me wait long enough. For a second, I forgot how breathing worked, which wasn't ideal, because she was standing right there, close enough that I could see the tiny freckle near her jaw. Close enough that if either of us moved an inch, the decision would be made. 9 years. 9 years of almost. 9 years of timing being wrong. Or maybe just fear wearing a disguise. Emma. My voice came out rough. She smiled nervously. That's usually my name. I laughed. God, I loved her. Even now. Especially now. Because somehow, in the most important moment of my life, she was still Emma. Still making jokes when she was scared. Still trying to make things easier for other people. Even when she deserved someone making things easier for her. I lifted my hand slowly, giving her time, giving her space, giving her every chance to change her mind. Instead, Emma leaned into the touch. Just slightly. Enough. More than enough. My thumb brushed her cheek, and her eyes closed for half a second. That tiny movement nearly destroyed what remained of my self-control. Hi, she whispered. I laughed softly. Hi. We're being weird. We're definitely being weird. Good. Good. She nodded. Normal wasn't getting us anywhere. I couldn't argue with that. Then she kissed me. Not dramatically. Not like a movie. No orchestra. No fireworks. No perfectly timed rain. Just Emma. Just the woman I'd loved for 9 years. Stepping forward and deciding she was done waiting. Her lips touched mine softly, carefully, as if she couldn't quite believe this was real either. For a moment neither of us moved. Then I felt her smile. And that was it. That was the end of every wall I'd spent years building. I kissed her back. One hand sliding to her waist, the other still holding hers. And suddenly the entire world disappeared. No wedding. No family. No lake. No future to worry about. Only Emma. When we finally pulled apart, she was laughing. Actually laughing. The happy kind. The kind I'd heard 1,000 times. But never like this. Never because of me. Not like this. Wow. I smiled. Wow. She nodded. That's been overdue. I laughed. By about 9 years. Maybe 10. Don't get greedy. Emma grinned. Then rested her forehead against my chest. For a long moment neither of us spoke. We just stood there, listening to the water, listening to our hearts calm down, trying to understand how everything had changed and somehow still felt familiar. Eventually Emma looked up. We should probably go back. Probably. Neither of us moved. People are going to start looking for us. Definitely. Still neither of us moved. Emma smiled. This is your fault. My fault. You're comfortable. I looked offended. What a strange accusation. She laughed and wrapped both arms around my waist. See? This. And honestly, I couldn't think of a single reason to let her go. Unfortunately, her family had other plans. The second we walked back into the resort, her cousin Tessa spotted us. And screamed. Actually screamed. The kind of scream usually reserved for surprise engagements and lottery winners. Oh my God. Every head in the lobby turned. Emma immediately covered her face. No. Tessa pointed at us. Oh yes. Within 30 seconds we were surrounded. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people I'd met exactly once. Everyone talking at the same time. Emma's mother arrived last. She looked from Emma to me, to our joined hands, then smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Oh, that was all she said. Just, oh. But somehow it felt like she'd figured everything out. Emma groaned. Mom. What? You knew. Her mother shrugged. I suspected. When? A pause. Then, the year you invited Logan to Thanksgiving and spent 3 hours pretending not to stare at him. Emma nearly died on the spot. And honestly, I wasn't doing much better. Her mother smiled at me, then gently squeezed my shoulder. About time. And for the first time all weekend, I realized something. Maybe we hadn't been the only people who knew. Maybe everyone had seen it. Everyone except us. That night should have been enough. It should have been the perfect ending. Boy meets girl. Best friends become something more. Everyone cheers. Roll credits. Life, unfortunately, had never cared much about perfect endings. The next morning, I woke up before Emma, which was unusual. Emma could normally wake up before the sun and still somehow look cheerful. I looked across the room. She was asleep on her side, one arm tucked beneath her pillow. For a moment I just watched her, not in a creepy way, in a grateful way, like someone who had spent years wanting something and was still surprised it was real. The sunlight coming through the curtains caught her hair, and I smiled, because for the first time in 9 years, I didn't have to wonder. I knew. She loved me. The thought still felt impossible. A few minutes later she opened one eye, then the other, then immediately smiled. You're staring. I've been accused of that before. Emma stretched beneath the blanket. How bad? Potentially criminal. She laughed. And just like that, the nervousness from yesterday disappeared. Not completely, but enough. Enough for us to feel like ourselves again. The wedding ceremony wasn't until afternoon, which gave us several hours to survive brunch with her family. That turned out to be harder than expected. The moment we entered the dining room, her Aunt Paula spotted us. Oh look, here we go. The lovebirds. Emma groaned. I tried not to laugh. Neither effort succeeded. For the next hour, every relative seemed determined to ask questions. How long had we been together? When had it started? Who made the first move? Why did it take so long? Emma's cousin even started a betting pool. Apparently half the family had believed we would end up together years ago. The other half had simply given up waiting. At one point, Emma leaned closer and whispered, I may never recover from this. I squeezed her hand under the table. You'll survive. Easy for you to say. Why? Because they're interrogating me. I looked around, then immediately made eye contact with Aunt Paula, who was absolutely staring at us. Actually, you may have a point. The wedding itself was beautiful, simple, warm, the kind of ceremony that made people think about their own lives, their own choices, their own futures. And halfway through the vows, I glanced at Emma. She was already looking at me. Her eyes softened. Then she smiled. A small smile, private, just for me. And suddenly the bride and groom weren't the only people imagining a future. That realization scared me. Not because I didn't want it, because I did. More than anything. For years. But wanting something and believing you can have it are very different things. Later that evening, after the reception had ended and the dance floor had finally emptied, Emma and I found ourselves alone again. This time on a wooden dock behind the resort. The lake was calm. The stars reflected on the water. And for a while we simply sat together. Her head resting on my shoulder. My arm around her. Neither of us in a hurry to speak. Eventually Emma broke the silence. What happens when we go home? I looked at her. What do you mean? She shrugged. A lot changed this weekend. That was true. More than either of us could have imagined. I don't know, I admitted. Emma nodded. I don't either. Then she laughed quietly. That's unusual. What is? You not having a plan. I smiled. Fair point. For years I'd planned everything. My career, my finances, my future, everything except this. Because planning for Emma had always felt dangerous. Too hopeful. Too painful. So instead of giving her a perfect answer, I told the truth. I don't know exactly what happens next. Emma watched me carefully. But I know what I want. Her expression softened. What? I took her hand. The same hand I'd held 1,000 times before. Only now it meant something different. Something bigger. I want tomorrow. She didn't speak. So I continued. And next week. Still silent. And next month. Her eyes were shining now. And every ordinary Tuesday after that. A tear escaped before she could stop it. Logan. Yeah. I think that's the most romantic thing you've ever said. I laughed. That's concerning. No. She shook her head. It's perfect. Then she leaned over and kissed me. Slowly. Gently. Like she wanted to remember it. Like she wanted to remember all of it. The wedding. The lake. The weekend. The moment everything changed. When we finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine and smiled. Good. What? Emma squeezed my hand. The waiting is over. For the first time in years, I smiled without fear, because she was right. The waiting was finally over. 3 months later, Emma moved a toothbrush into my apartment. Not officially. Not according to her. Officially, she had simply forgotten it. 7 times. Emma. What? I held up the toothbrush. The same blue toothbrush that had been sitting beside mine for 3 weeks. You forgot this? She glanced up from the couch. Oh, that's all you have to say? Oh, I laughed. She smiled, then returned to grading papers like the conversation was over. Emma still taught 4th grade, which meant our apartment was slowly being invaded by stickers, markers, construction paper, and enough glitter to qualify as a natural disaster. One afternoon I found glitter on my coffee mug. A week later it somehow appeared inside my truck. I still have no explanation. I think glitter reproduces. Emma looked up. That's ridiculous. I found some in the garage. She stared. Okay. Maybe not completely ridiculous. The strange thing was how quickly normal became extraordinary. Not because life suddenly became perfect. Didn't. We still argued. Still got annoyed. Still occasionally drove each other crazy. But now there was no hiding. No pretending. No wondering. One rainy evening we were cooking dinner together. Or more accurately, I was cooking. Emma was stealing ingredients. That's the 3rd piece of chicken. She looked innocent. I don't know what you're talking about. You're literally holding it. No proof. I pointed. She ate it, then smiled. The woman was impossible. Later that night she fell asleep beside me on the couch. A blanket pulled over both of us. Her head on my shoulder. Some terrible reality show playing in the background. And suddenly I remembered something. The engagement party. The joke. The garlic knot. The words that started everything. Emma was half asleep when I looked down at her. Hey. I have a question. One eye opened. Should I be worried? Probably. She sighed dramatically. Proceed. I smiled. That night. The party? Yeah. Emma immediately knew. I could tell. Because her cheeks turned pink. Even now, months later, still blushing. I loved that. You mean when you accidentally changed my life? I was thinking of a different description. She laughed softly. What about it? I brushed a strand of hair from her face. When I said I loved you, Emma smiled. A slow smile. The kind that always made my chest tighten. You thought I was joking. I hoped you weren't. The honesty of that answer hit me. Even after everything. Even after all these months. The truth still mattered. Emma shifted closer. So what's the question? I smiled. The same smile I got every time I remembered that moment. The same smile I knew I'd probably wear for the rest of my life. The question is. I kissed her forehead. Then her cheek. Then finally her lips. A soft, familiar kiss. The kind that felt like home. When I pulled back, she looked at me suspiciously. That wasn't a question. I know. Then what was it? I smiled. Because after 9 years of hiding, after one ridiculous fake relationship, after a wedding weekend that changed everything, there was only one answer. It was a reminder. A reminder of what? I wrapped an arm around her, pulled her closer, and whispered the words I would never get tired of saying. I love you, Emma. Her smile appeared instantly. Bright, warm, certain. The same smile that had changed my life. Then she leaned into my chest and whispered, Good. What? You finally learned. Learned what? Emma looked up, her eyes shining with amusement. The same thing I learned a long time ago. I laughed. And what's that? She kissed me once. quick and sweet, then smiled. The joke was never the joke. I stared at her, then groaned. That was terrible. It was romantic. It was terrible. It was both. I couldn't argue with that, because she was right. The joke had never been the joke. The truth had simply been waiting for us to become brave enough to say it out loud. And once we finally did, everything changed.